Okay, folks, we got more Carney conspiracy theories coming from conservative podcasters. Moose on the loose hit another tree. Just saying. Here we go, Moose. Now, he's claiming Mark Carney is business partners with Elon and Trump. Question mark, exclamation point. So he's questioning it, but yet he's making an exclamation point, which means, he's making an assertion that it is. So, it's flip-flopping, just like a friggin' egg. Sunny side up, over lightly. What do you want? And Canada's being sold out. So here's his latest brainchild. Yeah, let's go right to the beginning here.
In fact, we're going to rewire, so to speak, the entire global economy.
What you're about to see is going to blow your mind. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today I'm going to show you how Mark Carney, Elon Musk, and Donald Trump are business partners. It really appears Mark Carney's acting in America's best interest and his own, not Canada's. Let's jump into this. What you're looking at here is my master chart of Mark Carney. If we zoom out,
I got to admit, this guy makes some good charts. These are good charts. But the direction you're going in is just friggin' bogus. Really is bogus. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's see. What do we got here? Let's go right here for a bit.
And Elon Musk.
President Trump's tone when it comes to Canada-U.S. relations, Canadians have noticed it's shifted a bit in the past few weeks. He stopped talking about Canada becoming the 51st state, at least publicly. Reporter. I'm wondering if that's on purpose.
Now, what would be one of the worst things for a Liberal supporter who goes to Tesla dealerships to protest? Would it be the fact that Mark Carney's in business with Elon Musk? And as Donald Trump and Mark Carney worked out this whole thing, they planned everything from the start? Or are they planning for Mark Carney to win this election?
Isn't that going to make them more hostile to us and possibly
I'd rather deal with a liberal than a
for China, closer to Canada, and that would really put us in a bind.
A conservative that's running is stupidly no friend of mine. I think it's easier to deal actually with a liberal.
There's a lot of questions here. First, we're going to start off with Mark Carney. He was the vice chair at ESG, Brookfield Asset Management, starting from August 2020 to 2022. Then he became chair until 2025, at which point he stepped down. Now, who took over his position? Bruce Flatt, who's also the CEO of Brookfield Asset Management and Brookfield Corporation. So Bruce Flatt just took over this chair position.
One of the officers, just like a chair, has a different fiduciary responsibility. He does not make decisions, operating decisions. The operating decisions are up to the officers. And who is the officers? One for sure is Bruce Flatt, and there are going to be other officers. And the vice chair and chair operates in a fiduciary capacity that takes care of regulations above the operating guys. So the operating guys make all the decisions about the business, such as Bruce Flatt et al. And then all a guy like Carney or whoever's in the vice chair or chair position is make sure that they're maintaining and adhering to all the rules. That's all. Simple as that. Now, let's move on to the next thing where he's going to go to Frank McKenna here.
Warming it for Mark Carney to come back if he loses the election.
I have known Bruce Flatt, CEO of Brookfield, and many of the senior partners of Brookfield for longer than I'd care to admit, but I will admit.
Yeah, one thing about it, if you got a hockey game going, you got a good hockey team, you're going to leave a seat open for a good player when he comes back because you want good quality players. Understand there, Moose on the loose?
To more than a quarter century. I've seen what they have done with the firm, transforming it into one of the world's leading alternative asset managers, shifting from black to, through the spectrum, the underlying assets towards green, not all the way to green, but towards green.
Now, who else do we have here? Frank McKenna. Frank McKenna actually got Mark Carney into Brookfield Asset Management. You can see here in 2020, McKenna as chairman of Brookfield, chairman of Brookfield Corporation.
Did it say that Frank McKenna put him in Brookfield? Jeez. You made that up, didn't you? That's you. You made those charts. Anyways, a guy by the name of Dick Thompson was chairman of the board before Frank McKenna, and back originally when the money laundering was going with TD Bank, dealing with the Mexican, Colombian cartels, also laundering money for the Russians. Started off for the guy by the name of Boris Yeltsin, then morphed into a guy by the name of Putin. You following me now, David? So anyways, Dick Thompson was the chairman of the board with the TD. Now, another thing is, I don't even know. You're just going nowhere with this, David. Like, this lovely charts, granted. But you're failing to mention the Deutsche Bank. Manhattan Attorney General Letitia James, 32 felony counts against Trump for Deutsche Bank. And Deutsche Bank got nailed for a big fine. And got rid of some people too, because, you know, they're hiding all this kind of stuff. But it was so big they ran out of friggin' banks and they got kicked out of countries because of the laundering of the money. And I know the British blue blood that brought Trump into the fold to the Colombian and the Mexican drug cartels and then to the Russian system. And the Russian hoax was not a hoax. And I'm not going to elaborate anymore at this juncture.
Which you can see here, brought Mark Carney on board as vice chair of ESG Environmental, Social, and Governance Investment Strategies. Now, who is Frank McKenna? He's the deputy chair at
Now, ESG, is that not Ian Bremner? Maybe? I don't know. I'm not going down that friggin' rabbit hole. Oh, what's this here?
Place that could play a leading role, in fact, in many respects, a defining role in that.
Let's move over to the other side. So we've got Elon Musk. He's over here. Now, he's got a lot of ties, as you can see. Elon Musk has Twitter, SpaceX, Tesla, and The Boring Company. Now, to understand this madness here, all these connections, it all centers around...
Oh, and then here we go. There's a good part coming up.
Founders Fund invested in Twitter. Now, I mentioned Twitter because Twitter had that big buyout and Elon Musk needed money. Who did he get money from? Brookfield Asset Management. That's right. Mark Carney bailed out Elon Musk with that money he needed for Twitter.
Now, Mark Carney does not make those decisions. Holy moly. And Brookfield, and here's the other thing. Your boss, Pierre Poilievre, has a huge holding in Brookfield through Vanguard Index Fund. So why do you keep going down this friggin' rabbit hole that goes nowhere?
And we see that right here. So we have far leftists like this lady here who thinks she knows what she's talking about. She really doesn't. It's important to make our decision on who we're going to vote for based on facts and not emotion.
I have to tell you that this election, the one you have on April 28th, you're going to want to vote against the person who is in bed with and on the same side as the person who is currently running the United States. You need to cast a ballot that puts Mark Carney and the liberals undeniably in charge of your nation. You need to choose someone who's not in bed with Elon Musk. Someone whose closest advisor isn't buddy-buddy with our vice president.
Elon Musk reveals 18 investors pumping $7 billion into his buyout, including Sequoia Capital, Brookfield, Private Equity Insights. We can see that here, Brookfield.
Yeah, but Elon Musk was promoting Pierre Poilievre. So, what are you trying to do? Cover for Pierre Poilievre again? Holy smokes. What else you got here, buddy? This chart looks good, though. Chart looks very good. What are you going to do here? Let's see here. What are you going? Where are you going here? Good golly. Jonathan Donaldson Vance. You don't want that wacko coming here.
As you can see from this article, Thrive Capital believed to be leading new multi-billion-dollar investment in Stripe. Fintech giant Stripe as a company seeks to raise 55 to 60 billion valuation. So now we've got Donald Trump's extended family. We've got Elon Musk, who is in charge of Doge for Donald Trump. And we've also got J.D. Vance, Donald Trump's vice president, who was funded by none other than Peter Thiel, as it says here, $10 million donation to Super PAC Protect Ohio Values supports J.D. Vance 2022 Senate campaign. These guys are all connected. And that's not all. We still got Tesla and the Boring Company. So we go look over here.
You're going nowhere with this stuff. And you got to remember, Prem Watsa, all these Canadian former bankers, elitists, the elitist of the elite in Canada, vouch and put a full-page ad for Pierre Poilievre. And then you're trying to paint Mr. Carney as the elitist. Come on, do your research, buddy. You're barking up a wrong tree. A wrong tree. There you go. That's all it is. Oh, and then Andrew Scheer, he does a good friggin' smear job also. So there you go with that. That's that there. Let's get to some real business that people in Canada should know about. I'll provide a link in the description for this stuff for Moose on the Loose, if you're into friggin' Kardashians. Now let's look at some real stuff here. Oh, with the Moose on the Loose, you got to get some of these comments. You wouldn't believe some of these comments. You got to see these comments. You got to see this. Moose, you're doing legit investigative journalism. You should be really proud of your work on this. And then, why would Mark Carney leave a chair position that makes him $100 million plus with Brookfield asset to be Canada's prime minister? Boy, you guys are real smart. Why did Carney quietly issue billions in U.S. denominated debt 2 days after becoming PM? Where do you guys come up with this friggin' nonsense? I'll leave a link to this video. It'll be in the description. So let's get to stuff that really matters to Canadians. That's going to make a difference to Canadians, their lives. Now we're going to pivot to Caddy K, BBC journalist for a number of years, NBC as well, and Anthony Scaramucci, that actually worked in the administration for Trump 1. Not for a long time, but he worked there for a bit. And he worked at Goldman Sachs back when Carney was working at Goldman Sachs, so he knows Carney. And Anthony has his own investment fund in New York that he manages. So let's listen to this is premiered on April the 14th.
Here's another question that I think is interesting on tariffs. What can Carney in Canada and the EU do concretely, not just jawboning, in the next 90 days to counter this madness and protect their economies? That's from Per Joe 123. I mean, it's a great question, Per Joe, because we know that all of these, both Canada and the European Union, are reaching out to the administration and having conversations with the administration, and particularly with the trade envoys, and trying to see what exemptions they can get, how they could bring down the rate of tariff that they might be slapped with, what they can do in their own countries around sales taxes, for example. What are the other list of things that's on the Trump administration's list that they can do, that they can get away with doing politically and economically to satisfy the Trump administration in order that in 90 days they don't get hit by these tariffs. But some of it is also political. What what can they do politically in the European Union, for example, to hold together if the Trump administration were to try and pick off certain countries separately? And what can Canada and the European Union do together, bigger picture, to try and increase trade amongst themselves as a way of countering the United States?
Let me ask you something and get you to respond. What if they all got together? What if listen, the facts are undeniable about what happened to the decline in exports, the decline of living standards for the United Kingdom at this moment. So what if the United Kingdom, the EU, and Canada got together and created a free people, free trading bloc? And just said, hey, listen, we get it. We got the fact that you guys want to be alone. We got the fact that you want to Mexit, which is an American Brexit from the world. We understand that you want to do that. But we've learned our lesson. We learned our lesson over the last decade.
Yeah, what he's saying is very important to understand, because Pierre Poilievre's just going to wait he's just going to try to keep negotiating with the U.S. because all these conservative ideology podcasters wonder why Carney's approaching Trump the way he's approaching Trump, because Carney's pivot towards the UK and the EU already and started discussing trade with them, because there's a different thing that's going on here that nobody's understanding. And Pierre Poilievre is just going to be working on trying to do trade with the U.S. Makes no sense. Waste of friggin' time right now. And it's not going to happen quickly, and the people in Canada are going to suffer. We need to pivot new markets. Well, we're doing that with the U.S. And what happens if you got a Trump 3-term, 3.0? You're going to lose 8 years trying to force the U.S. to do business with us when you got a guy that can't do a straight deal with anybody and reneges on everybody.
We're going to team up with the Europeans and the Canadians, and we're going to form this free people, free trading bloc. I'm just throwing it out there as a potential idea that people could think about. I would just implore people to think differently now. You have the U.S. is telling you that they're done. They want to wall themselves off literally and figuratively from the rest of the world. I don't know. Is that going to happen? Are a few Republican senators going to say, geez, guys, I'm really sorry. We don't want this to happen. We're crossing the aisle. I can tell you it's not going to be Ted Cruz. I mean, that cat looks like Reek from the Game of Thrones. He's like wearing the gimp suit at the UFC thing, and this guy went after his wife. He's waving to the crowd. He's gained 60, 70 pounds since him and Trump started the fight. It's not going to be Ted Cruz. Who's going to be the group? Or is it Thune? Is Thune going to say, geez, I'm really sorry. I gave Schumer a call. It's me, McConnell, Markowski. I don't know. We're going to move over and caucus with the Democrats to end this nonsense. We're going to take the tariff power away from you. We're going to deny your quote unquote emergency act, and we're going to go to our allies and say, hey, we're going to sit this one out. You tell me, Kathy. Or are they going to let one guy in 80, 90 days wreck 80 years worth of work by the Americans? Is that what they're going to do?
No, I think they're trying to do that. I mean, I think things are happening simultaneously. So they're talking to the administration because each of them, these leaders, are trying to protect their own economies. They're also talking to each other. The problem is, as Alice is also pointing out, what will happen when the 90-day freeze on the tariffs are lifted? Will the fallout be as severe as Liberation Day, or will it be worse? The problem is this is only 90 days. You look back at, I was looking back at this the other day, NAFTA, which was the North American Free Trade Agreement that Bill Clinton signed in 1994, the very first discussions around NAFTA actually happened under George H.W. Bush and the Mexicans in 1990. So that took almost 4 years to negotiate. How do you negotiate a free trade agreement between the Japanese, the South Koreans, the Australians, the Europeans, and Canada when you've got the gun of 90 days hanging over your head with the Americans? I mean, you can start the process, but let's be realistic. You don't negotiate, or it hasn't been done before, a serious free trade agreement between countries in the space of 90 days.
I understand that, but there are measures, and this is an extreme circumstance. You have Admiral Yamamoto, that is Donald Trump. Who is Admiral Yamamoto? For all your history buffs, he's the one that did the sneak attack, surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. So Donald Trump is the Admiral Yamamoto of Trade War One. You are in a trade war. It is a world war. It is a trade war. Get your stuff together and start moving. Okay, you know, it's also really ironic is the guy Greer, who is the trade representative now, he's getting grilled last week in the Congress, and they're saying, well, how are you going to handle China? He's talking about teaming up with Asian countries. Gaddy, that was the TPP. Let's just remind everybody. So all of a sudden, everybody before Donald Trump and his minions, dumb, have made horrific decisions. The State Department told them, don't go to North Korea. He's just going to use you as propaganda. Trump said no, he's going to give up his nuclear weapons. He went to North Korea, got used as propaganda. People told him, don't give up on the TPP. This is a way to corral China, contain China, make the other countries safer and freer. Trump ripped it up. And of course, you know, Hillary Clinton, she ripped it up too because, you know, it was politically expedient. Rather than explaining to the American people the value of what Mike Froman and Barack Obama were doing, they said, oh, we're going to rip it up. It's the political winds of our time. Lots of populism out there. So the question really is, you're at war. Let's not pretend that we're not at war. Unfortunately, our leader, the country I live in, started the war. But you gotta recognize that you are actually in a trade war. Carney knows this. He's not stupid. Carney's attitude is, okay, we're in a trade war, and I got to protect my people. I got to win this election on the 28th, and then I'm going to go into lockdown. He'll start doing things like what I'm describing right now, because he's not going to sit there and say, roof, Donald Trump, are you going to throw me the ball and I'll chase it and run it back to you?
Well, he wouldn't get elected if he did. His only chance of getting elected is standing up to Donald Trump. And nor is Xi Jinping, by the way. I mean, more importantly in terms of the global economy than.
Here's the deal. Anthony, during his work, and Trump won. He knows the insight in what Trump's really like. And he knows. A guy like Pierre Poilievre's just going to waste his time trying to deal with Trump. And he's going to get nowhere, and he's going to get burnt. And he already knows, because he's spoken to Carney about it already, and he's not the only one, that you have to pivot. Maybe later, the climate trade with the U.S. might change. It's going to take a new administration. Things are going to have to drastically change. But it ain't happening overnight, kids. So understand that. This is going to be a long one. And it's going to be a blessing in disguise for Canada, because we need to remake how we do things. And it's going to work out better by doing it. Just saying.
Canada, we love the Canadians. We love the Chinese too. More importantly, Xi Jinping is not going to go roof, right? I mean, that's just.
Well, not only that, he's been preparing for this for decades. So this is a country that thinks in 50-year units of time.
Xi Jinping has been preparing for this for 50 years. He's from the Hans. And as a matter of fact, his dad was a communist, but the thing is, Xi Jinping rose up through the communist ranks, never told the communists that his father was a communist. He was very calculated how he did things, and this is what you do not understand about the Chinese.
They've been preparing for this trade war one for decades, and Admiral Yamamoto of the United States, he doesn't know what he's doing. One day he's got the tariffs on, then he's taking them off. Then he sends Lutnick out there to say that they're going to go back on. Now we don't know if they're on or off. The market's flipping and flopping.
Yeah.
100% pushing us into a recession.
It's a competency issue. I mean, there's a real competency question about America at the moment.
But
the competence is going to get worse when you stop financing science and stop financing universities and all.
It's not just a matter of competence. It's a matter of trust also. How can you make deals with a guy that you cannot trust? The NAFTA agreement was torn up and became Kuzma because Trump wanted his name on the deal. He said it was the best thing going. He's in Trump 2, and he's created a tariff war on the world. He's barely acknowledging any part of Kuzma, which doesn't come up for renegotiations until 2026. But you want to deal with the trade situation differently. We got to open up new markets first. Get rid of interprovincial barriers first and foremost, and work on our European allies and Mexico and Japan. That's it. New markets.
All of the things that made America so competitive, that
new markets,
made
baby.
it first
new
in
markets.
its class, if you will, are also at risk because of what is happening in this administration.
If you were in leadership, you understand the Chinese culture. You've traveled through China. You've met with many of their people and leaders. So they're just, the right-wing chant in America is that China is going to get demolished by America. They sell to us. We're 26% of the world's GDP. We're 33% of the world's consumption. And China is going to get annihilated by the United States pulling the plug. So the United States is 250 years old. The Chinese culture and the Chinese nation is 5,000 years old. So they're not going to outlast the Americans. You tell me, Katie. Tell me I got to make the right-wing argument that the Chinese are going to capitulate after they've got J.D. Vance calling them peasants and Trump acting like a maniac. President Xi's going to be like, hey, no problem. We'll do whatever you want, but we don't know what you're doing because you're zigging and zagging so much. We don't even know what you're doing. So
that's
what
what
would you
I'm
like
told,
us
is
to
that
do?
the Chinese don't know. And there's a lot of confusion in China at the moment about what the Americans actually want and what would lead to the kind of deals that the Americans want. But the Chinese also have their own political problem, which is that Xi has painted himself to the Chinese population as a strong leader, and a strong leader doesn't capitulate in the face of threats. And so and then we have another leader here who is obsessed with demonstrations of strength. Everybody has their own domestic issues politically that they have to deal with, and I think the Chinese are aware of that. They're very aware of the domestic political issues that Donald Trump has. I'm not as sure that this administration or this White House understands the domestic political issues thoroughly that China has. Okay, Tobin Sanson, here's a great question. How is everyone on the Trump team not exhausted? It's like your 6-year-old took over, the furniture's broken. It's like your 6-year-old took over and the furniture's broken, the lawn's on fire, the power's out, and you still have to pretend you love him and it's fine. Full disclosure, when my 6-year-old behaved like a brat and did all of those things, didn't put the lawn on fire, I did actually still love him. I didn't have to pretend I still loved him. But I think, Tobin, you're referring to the cabinet meeting that we had last week, which was a fantastic display of how much everybody in the White House loves President Trump.
By the way, you did make me blush last week with the compliments. After I asked you, I needed compliments. Yeah, you did. I really can't handle the compliments that well.
Very good at this.
Thin skin.
Good at this.
But Vance Cochran is saying something really interesting. I have to bring this up. Sorry, Anthony. A better analogy would be Hirohito, not Yamamoto. And I hear you from a leadership perspective, Vance. But if you read Gordon Prang's book or other great history books about Pearl Harbor, Hirohito did not want to attack the United States. He was very...
No, he did not want. He was pushed into it. And Yamamoto did not want to, but he was designated as the guy to do it.
Very, very worried about it. He succumbed in November of 1941 after the U.S. put sanctions. Remember, the U.S. stopped selling oil to the Japanese, and it was really Yamamoto, more than any of the other people in the military leadership, that pushed the attack. But I love that. I love the fact that Vance brought that up, because it's what makes the podcast fun, and we can talk about and debate history and what happened. But one of the reasons why he was left in power, and MacArthur said this, he was deemed to be a reluctant wartime emperor. They certainly didn't want to dismantle the entire Japanese culture around their emperor and all that other stuff. But I hear you. I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, I lived in Japan for a few years, and obviously that was always referred to as a low moment in Japanese history, and it's something that has dogged Japan ever since their conduct in the Second World War and why they still want to be a pacifist nation. But I think we may be at a moment with what is happening here in the United States where it actually pushes Japan, and it's an interesting place to end, because you could have a situation where pacifist countries, we've already seen it in Germany, where they've lifted the debt brake and increased a commitment to spending on defense. And I don't think it's impossible that we see Japan and South Korea looking at having their own security umbrellas, whether that includes nuclear weapons or not. But that is something that would have been unthinkable when I lived in Japan in the mid-1990s. It was not possible. It was not a discussion that was going to be had.
Well, hopefully people act responsibly and get rid of these nuclear warheads, because that is the wrong way to go. It just ruins everything for the human race. Nuclear power for regeneration, if done properly, to help us with new ways of getting our energy costs down and affordability for citizens, that's a different story. But nuclear armaments need to disappear. And that's the only way we're going to be able to evolve and to a much higher state of technology.
But we are now in a position where the Japanese have to look at fending for themselves and supporting and giving themselves their own security. And that if Japan ends up with a nuclear weapon, or South Korea ends up with a nuclear weapon, or other countries like Poland that have spoken about it end up with a nuclear weapon because they can no longer rely on the American security umbrella, does that make the United States a safer country?
Well, I mean, again, the hallmark of we dropped 2 bombs, and then for 80 years, we really haven't dropped any more bombs on people. We've tested them. But the hallmark of this thing was the non-proliferation, and so this would be very damaging. Kathy, I just want to address this, if you don't mind, very quickly. What steps could we take in the 90 days, right? People are asking that question. And I would say, I would get on the phone and say, okay, let's get together. What are the most important things that we're exporting? And let's see if we can have an agreement where we can zero out those things while we're trying to figure this out with Donald Trump. That's what I would say. You got to move.
Yeah, and they've got to move fast.
Got to try.
Donald Trump has not just done things that other administrations haven't done and broken norms that other administrations haven't broken. He is doing it at lightning speed. This is not a time, as Germany has found, for countries to move slowly. They need to be able to move fast and find ways to have these conversations. Britain with the European Union. And maybe that's good. Maybe actually in some ways speed can help get people through their old traditional barriers that they had with each other to say, okay, we have this existential threat right now. We have to act fast. Okay, we're going to leave it there.
And there you go. And that's the way things are. And this is what you have to understand, folks. We got to move fast, and we got to keep negotiating with the Americans, but it's got to be easy on the California wine, kids. But the thing is, we've got to open new markets. We got to cut out the interprovincial barriers from coast to coast. That's first and foremost. Open up new markets with the EU, Britain, Asia, Japan, South Korea, Mexico. And that's what we've got to do while we're negotiating with the U.S. at the same time. The U.S. is going to be a pariah for a while. They've initiated trade wars around the world, and we have to take care of ourselves, restructure, remake our economy for the better. Simple as that. So, folks, when anxiety, worry, and fears got a hold of you, you got to let it go, because that's just going to hit your central nervous system. And when it hits your central nervous system, It takes time off your biological clock. You want to live a good, long, happy life? No more pain and suffering. Let that stuff go. So when things are spiraling out of control, take a few deep breaths, have a nap, rest on it, and you'll come up with a different answer the following day. So anyways, love and peace to everyone. Take care. Questions, comments in chat. And once again, love and peace to everyone. Talk to you all soon. Thanks for watching.